my training gear with you guys and showing you all the sorts of different tools that I use to help train my birds. To be totally honest with you guys, I actually don't have that many training tools that I use when I'm training my animals. I only really have just the absolute basics, and it just kind of goes to show that you don't need to spend a lot of money to be able to successfully train your animals and get some unique behaviors out of it. I don't even have a training perch at this point in time. I do plan on getting one. I do think there's benefits to having one, but at the moment I just use the back of a chair. So this is really going to end up being a pretty short video, but I hope it at least shows you guys that you don't need to have all the fancy things in the world to be able to successfully train your animal. The first tool that I use most often is a training clicker. I have two different styles, but I usually use the closed button style clicker most frequently, and I like to use this black one by Trainright because it has two different buttons that I can press, which makes it nice and easy if I'm doing any target training and things like that, or I'm working with props, because it allows me to press the button from either side depending on how I need to maneuver my hand to be able to hold the prop as well as the clicker. I do have the open box style clickers as well. I just don't like using them with my birds because they are very loud and I find them just more awkward for me to hold personally. So this is usually my go-to. Next up would be the pouch itself. I have this little black training pouch by Canine Equipment. Yes, it is a dog training pouch. Most of the training pouches you're going to find in pet stores or online are going to be dog training pouches. There isn't really anything different between them and one that's marketed towards birds. If anything, I would just say make sure you get one that sits nice and open. I find a lot of the ones that are more shallow or a little bit thinner are a lot harder to actually get your treats out of, whereas if you have one that's nice and round that holds itself open or even has a wire going around the rim, it makes it a lot easier for you to click and then reach in and quickly grab a treat, as opposed to trying to weasel your hand into this half-closed pouch. So the more open and wide a pouch is my personal preference. I also like ones that have both a carabiner clip as well as ones that have the plastic attachment on the side that you can hook onto your pants. And that's just because I tend to be quite clumsy, and I've had it with my dog a few times where I've bent over and had the pouch just pop off. So that carabiner always just adds a little bit of extra safety where I can hook it onto a belt loop and hook it onto my pocket, and then I know it's going to stay put and not go anywhere. The other thing I like about this training pouch is this little mesh on the outside. You're supposed to use it for dog poop bags, but I use it to hold my clicker so that way everything stays together in one nice convenient little space, and I'm not running around trying to figure out where I've put everything. And I can also use it to hold big giant sprigs of millet and an alternative big treat, like a Nutriberry or something, if I'm doing a more complicated trick that day. On the inside of this pouch, it does have two separate compartments. One of them is smaller than the other. That's kind of the downside of this pouch though, is that these segments aren't separated very nicely. The material in between them isn't very stiff, so it's quite easy for you to struggle to kind of get behind that and get into the secondary pouch. But I do really like having pouches that have two different segments, because then you can have a high value reinforcer and a less valuable reinforcer, which works really well when you're utilizing jackpots in your training. I suppose the last thing I find most handy is actually the drawstring. When you close it up, it actually completely shuts out the pouch, and it is quite stiff and sturdy. And that's just because I leave the training pouch out in their room during the day if I'm not in there, and if I leave the birds unattended with it and it can't close itself and be firm and sturdy, they're going to break into it and they're going to gorge themselves on treats. So this is just nice because it's not difficult to close and it's secure when it shuts. It doesn't just kind of snap and then there's still some gaps. It's quite strong when it's shut. The last actual tool I use for training is just a chopstick, and I use this for target training. I don't have one of those super fancy dancy ones that you can get a plastic little ball on the end. This works just as well. You just hold it there, your bird knows to put their beak on it. It's not super complicated. You don't need to spend $20 for one that's attached to a clicker. It's just a plain, cheap stick. You could use a wooden towel. You could use a fork, you can use other utensils. I just go for a chopstick because it's easy and there's nothing complicated about it, and they're pretty cheap, so if something happens to it, I can replace it really easily. All target training is teaching your body to target or orient a certain part of their body towards a designated area. In this case, I want their beak to touch the end of the stick. And this is really helpful because you can get the birds to move their body wherever you want them to. So if you were teaching them to hang upside down, it would be pretty easy just to hold the stick underneath them and they would bend over to go and get it. So using this tool makes it really easy to sort of maneuver the birds where you want them to be to help teach other sorts of tricks. It just makes that communication a little bit clearer, so you're not trying to lure them with a treat and then having them get frustrated because they're reaching for it and then you're taking it away. So this just kind of makes it easy where they understand they have to move to where the object is, and it just makes it a little bit clearer, a little bit easier for everyone to understand. That's really it for the tool kit. I'm gonna put this away because they're not gonna stop. And that's really it for the actual tools that I use. I don't use much more than that in my regular day-to-day training. The only other thing I would use would be treats, and I've got a whole wall of them over there, which I'm showing you guys now. In my jars, I have millet that's already been kind of crumbled up and separated from the sprigs. I've got some dried up mango pieces, some flaxseed. The next jar is just a mixture of herbs that I'll add on top of their vegetables from time to time. That one's not actually a training treat. Beside those, I have sesame seeds, which are a lower value reward, and then I have sunflower seeds that I've already had the shell removed. Those are kind of the highest value reward that we use. And then I've just got one more jar on the bottom that is the millet sprigs in a jar that haven't been removed. Those I use more for foraging because I'll just use the entire ball and I'll just hide that into treats. But if I need to have some training treats and I don't have the jar ready, I'll take those and just kind of crumble them to separate all the seeds. And that's pretty much it. There's nothing really fancy about it. It's just a bunch of jars of seeds in it. Most of the seeds I do get from the grocery store. I usually try and buy them in little organic packages, or you can actually get them from the bulk department in most grocery stores. Just ask your local grocery store what brand makes it, because even though it's in a bulk container and it's unlabeled in the box, when it gets delivered, it does come in a case that has a brand name on the side of it, and it usually has an ingredients list as well. So if you're looking for dried fruit and you can't see it on the box, you can always ask the employee to check the box in the back, and it should list the ingredients to tell you if there's any sulfates or things in there that you can't give to your birds. As long as the ingredients are safe and their containment is clean and secure, there's nothing inherently wrong with going to the bulk department of a grocery store and getting food that way. When it comes down to a place to train, I do like to try and be consistent, and that is part of the reason why I will be getting a training perch again in the future. I used to have one, but when we moved from Vancouver to Winnipeg, I left it behind. But I do recommend having training perches or having at least a very consistent place that you train, whether it's on the door of a cage, on the back of a chair. Just because if you're in one consistent place, it puts them more in that mindset of, oh, we're going to be training, oh, I'm learning something, now it's time for me to be working. So when you take that time to have a very designated area, it makes it very clear what you're doing, and it helps the bird understand the whole process a lot easier. So I will be getting a training perch eventually, but for now I just use the back of the chair, or I'll use one of these perches on the back of the wall here that Newt has already set himself on. And it just makes it so that way they know these are the areas where we train, this is where we're going to be, this is what we're doing. And it just helps make that a little bit clearer. The last little thing I guess I could go over would be this little baggie. This is all of the props I use for training, so it'll have the ball for fetch, the basketball hoop, the harness, etc. This stuff I actually haven't used that much lately, and there's some things in here that I haven't actually gotten around to training. Like there's a little skateboard in here that I was going to use to teach him how to do that, but I haven't really settled on if I even want to do it. The basketball hoop that I made out of like a dollar store chalkboard, and I just removed all the chalkboard material off of it, and then we took some stainless steel materials and we made a little hoop. And then the ball, I get a lot of questions about this ball. This ball came off of a play set. It was supposed to be like a little workout gym thing. I think pet stores still carry it, but I'm really not sure. I just got it from like a PetSmart or something, and this was the ball that came with it. An alternative to this ball is just a really small twine ball. You can get really teeny tiny ones online, and then they're not that expensive, and you can get a bunch of them, so if they chew them up, it's not the end of the world, and you can get them in different colors. I've got two different harnesses in here. I have the aviator, and then I have the mini wings. You guys have been asking me a lot if I will do a video on harness training. At this present point in time, the answer is no, because neither of my birds are particularly comfortable with it at this point in time. I did have Mia harness trained, and I did have Mia going outside a little bit back in BC, but again, Mia is such a flighty, scaredy bird that it wasn't as beneficial for her as I would like it to have been. And like you can sit there and you can counter condition the fears, but when you're a prey animal and you're used to everything, you know, coming after you, and then you're put in an environment where you're really scared, it's just going to be a lot more stressful than to just not put her through that. Really, for Mia, I don't think it's going to be something that's going to benefit her nearly as much as it would another bird that's a little more confident and wants to engage in the outside world a little bit more. Even though I could take the time to counter condition those fears, it's still kind of in the back of the head that she is a prey animal and her physiology is going to be telling her to be afraid, even if she's doing her best not to be. It takes a lot to actually untrain a natural response, and it's not always necessarily worth the the outcomes. Newt I might harness train in the future. I just haven't decided really on what size harness is going to be best for him, because the one I have right now is technically supposed to fit him, but it's just a weird size, and I think he's just a weird size. But so I'm kind of deciding whether or not I want to dump another 50 bucks on getting another harness and giving it a shot. But we'll look into it a bit more and consider it. If I do decide to harness train him, of course I'll make a video on it. But it's just going to come down to what I decide is best for my animals. And that is it. That is every single thing that I have that I use to train my animals. There's really nothing extra, there's nothing special, there's nothing fancy. And quite honestly, you don't need half the supplies that I even have. The only thing you really need are some treats and a bird. You can train without a clicker, you can train without a pouch, you can get creative and just hook a little Ziploc bag on the side. You don't have to have these things. I just find some of them helpful, and with how much training I do, I find it necessary to have them. So you by no means have to have any of the things that I have, and you by no means have to have the brands that I have. I just grabbed whatever was closest to me in my personal preferences. It's really entirely up to you. So that is going to do it for today's video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all next time. Bye! You're very chatty. Peep, 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 peep.